On May 25, 2020, an event occurred in Perth, Australia that would forever change the Rebelo family's life. 19-year-old Fabian, after finishing his shift at the supermarket, was waiting for his 58-year-old mother, Colleen Rebelo, to pick him up from work. But she never arrived. After several unsuccessful attempts to reach his mother by phone, a worried Fabian walked home. Entering the house, he heard the shower running in the bathroom. Fabian knocked on the door, but there was no response. When he decided to enter, the young man found his mother unconscious on the bathroom floor. Despite immediately calling an ambulance and attempting resuscitation himself, Colleen Rebelo was pronounced dead. While waiting for paramedics, Fabian performed artificial respiration and chest compressions, but all proved futile. The arriving medical team could only confirm her death. Initially, her passing appeared to be from natural causes. The woman had health problems: autoimmune thyroiditis, Hashimoto's disease, and certain cardiac issues. No one could have imagined that something much more sinister lay behind this tragedy. Colleen Rebelo was a loving and caring mother of 4 children, daughter Monica and 3 sons, Julian, Andre, and Fabian. Previously, the Rebelo family had owned a mining business, but after divorcing her husband, Colleen was left without work. She raised her children alone, working in cafes to support the family. At night, she took on additional work stocking shelves in stores, doing everything possible to give her children a decent future. Despite the difficulties, Colleen strived for self-fulfillment. At 51, she earned her bachelor's degree, then continued her education at university, specializing in healthcare management, policy, and leadership. Her perseverance paid off. Just 2 weeks before the tragic events, Colleen had secured a new job in the health department, which was a significant achievement for her. Colleen paid close attention to her health, especially considering her chronic condition. In her free time, she exercised and was known among acquaintances as a health enthusiast. Friends and colleagues described her as energetic, determined, and cheerful, always ready to help others. By 2020, the older children were already living independently. Julian, about whom little is known, had moved to another city and rarely appeared in his native Perth. Andre lived nearby with his girlfriend Gracie, while Monica and Fabian still remained with their mother. Monica, who closely resembled her older brother Julian in appearance, was studying to become a paramedic. Fabian, the youngest child, worked at a supermarket. Despite their different life paths, all the children maintained close ties with their mother. On the morning of May 25th, Monica spoke with her mother before leaving for her studies. According to her, Colleen looked perfectly healthy and didn't complain about feeling unwell. The woman was in good spirits, making plans for the future and rejoicing in her recent achievements. Nothing foretold the tragedy that would unfold just hours later. Colleen's middle son, 26-year-old Andre Rebelo, and his girlfriend Gracie Piscopo were a well-known couple on the internet. They met in 2015 through mutual friends, essentially through Gracie's ex-boyfriend, and then began communicating via Instagram. By 2020, they already had a son named Romeo. Gracie was a successful model and influencer with over 1 million Instagram followers and 300,000 on YouTube. She regularly posted photos, videos, and promotional posts, which brought her a stable income. Her content included fashion photo shoots, food reviews, travel vlogs, and everyday life. Andre called himself a cryptocurrency expert, claiming he could predict market fluctuations and earn 6-figure sums. He portrayed himself as a successful businessman who could generate significant income through investments in digital assets. However, in reality, his cryptocurrency operations brought minimal profit. There's a documented case where he earned just 22 Australian dollars. On social media, the couple displayed a luxurious lifestyle. Their videos showed a spacious house with a large fireplace, huge sofas, and expensive furniture. They drove a white Range Rover Evoque, traveled the world, and bought expensive things. Home videos shot in April 2020 clearly show the luxurious setting of their home and numerous designer items. In these online materials, Gracie was the main star. Her son Romeo took second place in frequency of appearance, while Andre only occasionally appeared on camera. He worked more behind the scenes, helping his girlfriend manage her social media and organize advertising contracts. However, reality differed greatly from what they showed their followers. The car was purchased on credit, which they struggled to pay off each month. The house didn't belong to them. The couple owned no real estate or other valuable assets. Their financial situation was extremely unstable. Gracie was the main source of income for the family. She could have earned more if necessary, but Andre's cryptocurrency business wasn't profitable. He constantly lost money instead of earning it. By May 2020, the couple's total debt exceeded 120,000 Australian dollars, about 75,000 US dollars. Colleen worried about her son's financial future. She considered his internet work a temporary phenomenon and feared that popularity could quickly disappear. The woman didn't approve of her son spending money on luxury instead of creating a financial safety net. She often told him that he needed to think about the future and invest in more reliable assets rather than maintaining an image on social media. Perhaps it was the constant pressure from his mother, as well as the need to match the image of a successful man alongside the popular Gracie, that pushed Andre toward the desperate step he would take in the near future. The morning of May 25th, 2020 began for Andre and Gracie with joyful anticipation. The couple planned to spend a pleasant day with Gracie's cousin, who had come to visit them from another city. They intended to have lunch together at a cafe, and Gracie was eagerly looking forward to this meeting. Around 10 o'clock in the morning, Colleen drove her youngest son Fabian to work at the supermarket, promising to pick him up at 2 p.m. after his shift ended. Returning home, she apparently went about her usual business. At approximately the same time, around 10 in the morning, something strange happened. Andre suddenly disappeared from home without saying anything to either Gracie or her cousin. He simply vanished without explanation. At first, Gracie didn't give it much importance, deciding he would return soon. But time passed, and Andre didn't appear. Worried, Gracie began sending him messages and calling, but all attempts to contact him remained unsuccessful. Between 11:10 and 11:25, she made 12 calls to his phone, but Andre didn't answer. Her messages became increasingly insistent. "Answer the call. Where are you? Don't you have a phone? What's wrong with you? Answer, damn it. I'm furious. I'm so angry at you." Several hours passed, and Gracie was beside herself with rage. She couldn't understand why Andre had disappeared, leaving her alone with her cousin. And suddenly, around 2 p.m., Andre returned home and, as if nothing had happened, asked the girls where they wanted to go for lunch. His behavior seemed strange and unusual. Gracie was shocked that he acted as if nothing special had happened, though he had made them wait for several hours without any explanation. Later she would say that although Andre sometimes put his phone on silent mode, that day he was particularly inattentive. Before heading to the cafe, Andre texted his mother asking her to look after their son Romeo today or tomorrow. He explained that he had things to do and wouldn't be able to take care of the child. Colleen didn't respond to this message. At that moment, the woman was already dead. Later, during the investigation, it was discovered that while Andre was away from home, his phone was detected near cell towers close to his mother's house. Witnesses also saw a white SUV similar to his Range Rover Evoque parked near Colleen's house at around 1:30 p.m., shortly before Andre returned home to Gracie. At the same time, around 2 p.m., Fabian was finishing his shift at the supermarket and waiting for his mother to pick him up. Not receiving her and getting no answer to his calls, he walked home. It was he who would discover Colleen's lifeless body in the bathroom. Police officers who arrived at the scene thoroughly examined Colleen's house but found nothing suspicious. Everything was in its place. Nothing was missing. All windows and doors in the house were locked from the inside. There were no signs of breaking in or intrusion by unauthorized persons. Given that Colleen had health problems, the initial theory leaned toward natural causes of death. The woman suffered from Hashimoto's disease and had heart problems, which could have led to sudden cardiac arrhythmia or even a brain aneurysm. The autopsy results didn't provide clarity. The exact cause of Colleen Rebello's death wasn't established. Not a single injury or trace of physical impact was found on her body. Everything pointed to the woman dying of natural causes. All of Colleen's children categorically ruled out the possibility of suicide. The woman was in excellent spirits, had recently received her master's degree and had started a new job. She was making plans for the future and showed no signs of depression or suicidal tendencies. Colleen's death was a blow to the entire family. Her children were deeply shocked by what happened. The eldest son, Julian, who lived in another city, decided to stay in Perth for a couple of months to help with organizing the funeral and settling his mother's affairs. Since no suspicious circumstances were identified, the case of Colleen Rebello's death was effectively closed. However, strange events would soon begin to occur, forcing the police to return to this case and look at it from a completely different angle. After Colleen's death, her eldest son Julian decided to stay in Perth for several months to deal with his mother's affairs. It was he who began to notice strange things in Andre's behavior. When Julian was reviewing his mother's documents, he discovered that her driver's license had disappeared. When questioned about this, Andre admitted that he had taken it. Additionally, Andre took the initiative to settle Colleen's financial affairs, although Julian was supposed to act as the executor of her will. Then Julian learned that his mother had several life insurance policies. Neither he nor other relatives knew that just 2 weeks before Colleen's death, Andre had taken out 3 insurance policies on her for a total of more than $1 million. It also seemed strange that Andre had arranged for all of Colleen's mail to be redirected to his address, even though Monica and Fabian continued to live in their mother's house. Also, Andre was the first person the coroner contacted by phone, although Julian was initially supposed to fulfill this role. It seemed that Andre was always one step ahead and kept everything under control. This alarmed Julian, who couldn't understand why his brother was showing such unusual activity in their deceased mother's affairs. Suspicions intensified when Colleen's former psychologist called Monica and asked why fraudulent documents had been submitted to the insurance company on her behalf. Monica knew for certain that she hadn't sent any papers. The insurance companies, having examined the submitted documents in detail, noticed errors and inconsistencies and suspected fraud. One of the companies contacted the Western Australia police, and officers began an investigation. 5 months after Colleen Rebello's death, all her children were called in for questioning. The police obtained a warrant to search both Colleen's house and Andre and Gracie's residence. Following the searches and interrogations, Andre was arrested on fraud charges. Investigators discovered that after his mother's death, he had forged medical certificates, a will, and even the coroner's report. Andre had made himself the sole heir to all his mother's property, completely excluding his brothers and sister. Upon learning this, Julian, Monica, and Fabian were shocked and began to wonder if Andre had killed their mother. A carefully thought-out scheme was uncovered. Each time an insurance company denied Andre a payout, he found a way around it, usually with forged documents. He built a whole chain of fake papers, unwittingly creating evidence against himself. After being charged with fraud, Andre was released on bail while detectives continued gathering evidence. The man hoped that investigators wouldn't be able to prove his guilt in a more serious crime than document forgery. It's important to note that Gracie wasn't involved in the fraud and had nothing to do with this case. Detectives installed listening devices and a hidden camera in the couple's home. From October to December 2020, they recorded conversations between Andre and Gracie. In these recordings, Andre repeatedly confessed to forging documents, while Gracie expressed her bewilderment and disappointment. "What have you done? You've put us in a terrible position. Why did you do it? That was so stupid of you." She also expressed fears that she might end up a single mother. When Gracie asked, "How does one even commit insurance fraud? What are you going to do next? Run away?" Andre replied, "I didn't think this would happen. I'm not going to prison. I'll get my money and then leave the country before I end up behind bars." These recordings became important evidence for the investigation. They showed that Andre was aware of the wrongfulness of his actions and was already planning how to avoid punishment. While the investigation was ongoing, Andre continued his usual lifestyle. He lived with Gracie and their son. The family still recorded videos and posted photos on social media, maintaining the appearance of well-being. However, detectives continued gathering evidence and analyzing all the circumstances of Colleen Rebello's death. The deeper they dug, the more convinced they became that the case required a more thorough investigation. After 2 years of painstaking work, in November 2022, Andre Rebelo was officially arrested and charged with murdering his mother. Detectives had conducted a thorough investigation and gathered enough circumstantial evidence to bring this charge. The prosecution presented their version of events. Andre and Gracie displayed a luxurious lifestyle on social media, which was partially financed through advertising contracts but also maintained with credit cards and personal loans. Gracie earned money independently, while Andre lied to her about his cryptocurrency business. He assured his girlfriend that he was making big money in cryptocurrency, but these funds were temporarily unavailable. In reality, Andre had nothing but enormous debts. According to court data, at the time of Colleen's death, the couple's total debt was $121,000. They had no assets and practically no savings. The pressure Andre experienced was enormous, though self-created. He lied to Gracie about his income, continued to maintain a luxurious lifestyle, and having become a father and partner to a successful woman, felt the need to prove his worth to her. Being in a relationship with a popular model, Andre strived to show that he was equally successful and could provide for his family. This psychological pressure, according to the prosecution, became the motive for his criminal actions. That's why, according to the prosecution's version, he took out several life insurance policies on his mother, made himself the sole heir, and then coldly took her life. If he had successfully implemented this scheme, he could have presented part of the money as income from cryptocurrency, thereby confirming his reputation as a successful businessman. Since much time had passed from the moment of Colleen's death until the police began investigating the case as murder, investigators couldn't find surveillance camera recordings in the area of her house. However, they discovered a detailed paper trail connecting Andre to several insurance companies. Detectives carefully analyzed every detail, every action of Andre before and after his mother's death. They studied his digital footprint, phone records, bank transactions, and witness testimonies. One detective told the court that when examining Andre's laptop, they discovered an attempt to delete all his internet activity from December 2019 through July 2020. However, he didn't delete Google search queries after his mother's death, including queries about causes of aneurysms, documents, and investigations. Digital data analysis also showed that Andre's phone was detected by cell towers near his mother's house at the time she presumably passed away. This suggests that at the moment of the tragedy, Andre was somewhere nearby. Additionally, witnesses were found who saw a white SUV parked near Colleen's house at approximately 1:30 p.m. on May 25th. The vehicle matched the description of Andre's car. Particularly suspicious was that the woman passed away just 2 weeks after Andre took out 3 life insurance policies in her name. The time frame was too short to consider this a coincidence. The prosecution claimed that Andre arranged everything to make Colleen's death look natural. He acted carefully but still made several mistakes. In photos taken by police immediately after discovering Colleen's body, it was visible how the woman was lying near the shower. She had makeup on her face, jewelry on her neck, and a gold watch on her wrist. Plus, she was dressed, not in shower clothes. Colleen hadn't let her hair down, and the mat she usually placed in the bathtub was on the floor. Everything looked unnatural, not like a normal shower procedure. According to her daughter, her mom always removed her jewelry and watch in her room, pinned up her hair, and only then went to the bathroom. These inconsistencies became important details in building the prosecution's case. They indicated that the scene in the bathroom had been staged rather than reflecting the natural course of events. The investigation reconstructed the events of that day. Colleen drove her youngest son to work at 10 in the morning and then immediately went home. At 2 p.m., she never appeared at the supermarket to pick up Fabian. This means the woman passed away in the time frame between 10 and 2 o'clock. It was during this period that Andre's phone was detected in the area of Colleen's house. Moreover, his sudden disappearance from home, not answering Gracie's calls, and returning at approximately 2 p.m. coincides with this time window. Detectives also discovered that Andre used artificial intelligence to create a fake voice message from Colleen's psychologist. This was further evidence of his careful preparation for fraud. In court, Andre claimed that his mother was very worried about turning 60 soon, and therefore wanted to take out insurance so that her children and grandchildren would have finances in case of her death. However, The prosecution pointed out that this doesn't explain why all these policies were in Andre's name as the sole beneficiary, rather than divided among all the children. The combination of circumstantial evidence created a convincing picture. Time coincidences, the location of Andre's phone at the moment of Colleen's presumed death, his strange behavior that day, the taking out of insurance policies immediately before the tragedy, the subsequent forgery of documents, all this pointed to his involvement in his mother's death. Although the investigation had no direct evidence of murder, such as video recording or confession to the crime, the combination of circumstances created an almost irrefutable version of events. Every minor detail, every coincidence, every strange action by Andre, everything worked against him, building up into a logical picture of premeditated crime. In court, Andre denied his guilt in his mother's murder, but admitted that he had taken out 3 insurance policies in Colleen Rebello's name and then forged documents to receive payments. This confession to a lesser crime was, perhaps, a tactical move by the defense, an attempt to avoid a more serious charge. Andre's lawyers built a defense line on the basis that Colleen's death was the result of natural causes. They offered various possible causes, including cardiac arrhythmia or brain aneurysm, given the woman's existing health problems. The defense emphasized that the coroner couldn't establish the exact cause of death, and no injuries or traces of violent actions were found on the body. They insisted that the prosecution was built exclusively on circumstantial evidence and coincidences, without direct evidence of Andre's involvement in his mother's death. The lawyers also pointed out that Andre's subsequent actions in forging documents didn't prove his guilt in the murder. They claimed he could have simply taken advantage of the situation after his mother's natural death, trying to solve his financial problems, but that doesn't mean he was involved in the death itself. However, the defense's position was significantly weakened by Andre's own testimony and numerous inconsistencies in his version of events. His explanations of why he took out insurance policies only for himself, and not for all of Colleen's children, sounded unconvincing. Attempts to present his actions as concern for the family's financial well-being also raised doubts, given that he excluded his brothers and sister from the will. Andre himself remained confident throughout the process, almost emotionless. He rarely showed any feelings, even when discussing his mother's death or the possibility of receiving a life sentence. This coldness and detachment made an unfavorable impression on the jury. Andre Rebello's story is not only an account of crime, but also of its destructive impact on the lives of many people, especially his loved ones. Above all, it's a story of how greed and deception destroyed an entire family. After Andre's arrest, the media actively covered the case, and Gracie found herself under public scrutiny. Some publications wrongfully linked her to Andre's crimes, although the official investigation completely ruled out her involvement. Gracie became a victim of circumstances, unexpectedly facing betrayal from the person closest to her. This was a difficult period for her. She had to not only cope with the shock of realizing that her partner could commit such a terrible crime, but also protect her young son from the negative consequences of this situation. The entire life she had built with Andre collapsed in an instant. "What have you done? You've put us in a terrible position." These words from Gracie, recorded during the surveillance of their home, reflect the depth of her shock and disappointment. She found herself face to face with a reality that was far different from the ideal lifestyle displayed on social media. The situation was no less complex for the Rebello family. Julian, Monica, and Fabian lost not only their beloved mother, but also a brother who betrayed their trust. They had to accept the thought that a member of their family could do something so horrible for money. It was especially hard for the youngest brother, Fabian, who discovered his mother's body. This traumatic experience left a deep mark on his psyche. The thought that all this might not have been an accident or natural death, but the result of his own brother's actions, was unbearable. Monica, who at that time was training to be a paramedic, also experienced severe emotional stress. She often wondered if she could have noticed some signs or prevented the tragedy if she had been home that day. Julian, who first began to notice strange things in Andre's behavior after his mother's death, felt a special responsibility for uncovering the truth. It was his vigilance and attention to detail that helped launch the process that ultimately led to Andre's arrest. Andre's father, Antonio, also became an unwitting victim of this situation. Present at the trial, he painfully observed the proceedings against his son. His reaction to the verdict was much more emotional than Andre's own, which many attendees noted. The trial of Andre Rebello attracted enormous public attention. His story seemed incredible. A young man from a good family, leading a luxurious lifestyle on social media, was accused of murdering his own mother for money. The prosecution presented all the collected evidence to the court. They detailed Andre's scheme, taking out insurance policies shortly before Colleen's death, his whereabouts on the day of the tragedy, subsequent attempts to receive insurance payments using forged documents. All this added up to a complete picture of the crime, the motive for which was Andre's financial situation and his desire to maintain the appearance of a successful person alongside a famous model. Defense attorneys did everything possible to sow doubts about Andre's guilt in the murder. They acknowledged his guilt in fraud, but insisted that Colleen's death was the result of natural causes, and Andre merely tried to take advantage of the situation after the fact, not that he was involved in the death itself. The jury carefully listened to all arguments, examined the presented evidence and witness testimonies. Despite the absence of direct evidence of murder, the totality of circumstantial evidence proved convincing enough. In December 2024, after careful consideration of the case, the jury delivered a unanimous verdict. Andre Rebello was found guilty of murdering his mother. The moment of the verdict announcement was tense. Silence fell in the courtroom as the judge read the decision. Antonio Rebello, Andre's father, couldn't contain his emotions when the verdict was announced. His face expressed deep grief and shock. He looked completely devastated. Meanwhile, Andre himself remained almost indifferent. His face showed almost no emotion when he heard he was found guilty of the most serious crime. Since Andre didn't plead guilty, he faces the most severe punishment, a life sentence without the possibility of parole. The final sentence is to be announced in April 2025, after additional hearings and consideration of all circumstances of the case. Andre Rebello's case raises many questions about the psychology of a person capable of such a crime. What drives a person to cross the line and commit the irreparable? What psychological mechanisms underlie such behavior? According to experts who studied this case, Andre showed signs of narcissistic personality disorder. He was obsessed with creating a certain image in the eyes of others, especially his girlfriend Gracie. This image of a successful, wealthy man became more important to him than reality. Additionally, Andre exhibited signs of pathological lying. For years, he deceived Gracie about his income from cryptocurrency, creating an illusion of financial stability that didn't actually exist. This habit of lying perhaps made it psychologically easier for him to transition to more serious forms of deception, including fraud and document forgery. Also noteworthy is the emotional coldness that Andre demonstrated throughout the process. He rarely showed any emotions, even when discussing his mother's death or his possible life imprisonment. This detachment may indicate a lack of empathy, another alarming psychological sign. Social media played a special role in this story. The constant need to maintain a certain lifestyle for followers created additional pressure. The gap between reality and what was shown to the public grew larger, backing Andre into a corner. Andre's mother, Colleen, apparently was the only person who saw his real financial situation. Her concern about his future and possibly criticism of his lifestyle could have become an additional stress factor for Andre. The relationship between them, it seems, was tense due to different views on finances and career. Ultimately, fear of losing status, shame from possible exposure of his financial problems, and desperation from growing debts could have pushed Andre to extreme measures. Instead of admitting his mistakes and starting over, he chose the path of crime, which led to tragic consequences for everyone involved. Andre's actions destroyed not only the life of his mother, brothers, and sister, but also seriously impacted Gracie's life. She became a victim of deception and was left alone with a small child. After Andre's arrest, the media spoke unfavorably about her, which further aggravated her situation. Despite all the difficulties, Gracie was able to maintain her career in social media. Her popularity didn't decrease, but even increased after all these events. She continues to maintain her pages, posting photos and videos, but now her content has become more sincere and less focused on displaying luxury. Most importantly, Gracie found the strength to move on. She met a new partner, with whom they are raising her son Romeo together. This person, unlike Andre, doesn't strive for ostentatious luxury and provides her and the child with the stability and support they deserve. The Rebello family continues to cope with the aftermath of the tragedy. Julian, Monica, and Fabian support each other during this difficult period. They try to preserve the bright memory of their mother, remembering her not as a victim of a horrible crime, but as a wonderful woman who cared for them all her life and overcame difficulties for their well-being. Colleen Rebello is remembered by all who knew her as an exceptionally strong and purposeful individual. Despite the difficulties of being a single parent, she managed to get an education and create a better future for herself and her children. Her life path, from a cafe worker to a healthcare specialist, inspires many who knew her story. Andre Rebello's case has become a subject of discussion, not only in crime chronicles, but also in psychological research. It makes one think about how the pressure of social media and the desire to maintain a certain image can lead to catastrophic consequences. Andre Rebello's story is a reminder of how deceptive the appearance of well-being can be, especially in the era of social media. Behind beautiful photos and videos, a completely different reality can hide, full of debts, lies, and desperation. And sometimes this reality leads to tragic consequences that cannot be fixed. It's also a story about how the pursuit of an illusion of success can lead to the loss of what's most important: family, freedom, and ultimately, humanity. The desire to seem, rather than to be, became for Andre Rebello the beginning of a path that led him to the most terrible crime and destroyed the lives of everyone who was dear to him. In 2025, Andre Rebello awaits the final sentence, which will likely be maximally severe. But no punishment can bring Colleen back to life and repair the damage that was done to her family. The only thing that remains is to learn lessons from this tragic story and remember that no money or status is worth crossing moral and human principles for.